Drug use in the CSRA does exist. Addiction is real, and we wanted to take a few moments of your time to explain to you how serious it is in the CSRA. We have a group of people here who are going to explain to you their journey. They're going to bare their souls in hopes that they may touch you or someone in your life who might be impacted by drugs. It's called From Drugs to Dreams, and it's a panel discussion with 6 amazing, wonderful people who have decided to share their story. I'm joined now with 6 individuals who have discussed with me before this panel discussion what their lives are like. And so we're going to start with you, Pastor Nobles. Can you just tell us, and we're going to go around here, tell me who you are. I already know who you are, but for the people who are watching, your names, and if you have a position here, tell us your position. And then I want to know how long you've been clean. We'll start with you, Pastor.
Clifton Nobles. I'm the founder of 143 Ministries International and also the pastor of the River Church, and I have 7.5 years clean.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm Wyatt Schaefer. I'm a part of the recovery home. I'm in the recovery home right now. I have a 5.5, 6 months clean.
Excellent.
I'm Joe Hernandez. I'm an addiction medicine doctor and a psychiatrist at MCG.
Okay.
My name is Tara Brown. I'm a graduate of Catherine's Way, and I have 18 months clean on Saturday.
Congratulations, too.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. That's real good to hear.
My name is Anna Nobles. I'm the women's director of Catherine's Way, and I currently have 4 years clean.
Okay, good.
My name is Laura King. I have 3 months sober, and I'm currently in Catherine's Way.
Okay. And so at this point, everyone here has something in common in that you've had some type of experience with drugs or drug addiction, alcohol addiction, or someone that you know. And so I want to just paint the picture. We hear a lot about the opioid epidemic that's going on in the United States that's killing several people every day, every year. And we also know that there's also an issue with just substance abuse in general, but the opioid addiction is huge here. Pastor, you've seen that here in the CSRA. When we first met, you talked about the 2 big drugs that are prevalent in the CSRA and that it's a really big deal. It's pretty scary.
Yeah, I've actually been on both sides of it. I was a drug dealer early on, went to prison for that, and then later on after getting out, I actually became a victim of the opioid epidemic. And so I've seen it from both ends, and there is a huge drug problem here in the CSRA. We see a lot of people addicted to methamphetamines and heroin, and so yeah, there's a big problem here.
And can you kind of describe for me how you got into this world of drug addiction? Talk about, because you've been on both sides, and we'll talk a lot about how you're helping others. Incredible story, but tell me how you started.
Well, recreationally, originally, when I was early teens, started messing around with weed and alcohol, and that led me into other things, other drugs, cocaine and hallucinogens, and it kind of just took off. And then I got into selling drugs, like I mentioned, and like I said, that led me to go into prison for selling drugs. In 2004, I was sentenced to 7 years, and that still didn't have enough of an impact to make me stop. After coming home, I was clean for a couple of years, but I didn't have a program. I didn't understand addiction. I didn't understand recovery. And so after a couple of years, I ended up going back into it. And it was only when I was in my early 30s that I actually went to a treatment facility where they taught me about addiction, and they taught me actually what was going on with me and how to treat it, that I was able to get clean. And so now that's what we're doing. We're trying to teach as many people as we can what's actually going on with them with addiction.
And a lot of times it's simple. You have an injury, you end up on a painkiller, and it treats that pain for the time, and then you realize, oh my gosh, I'm hooked.
Yep.
And so you had an experience with that as well.
Yeah, I did. I was actually injured on the job in 2011, and I was already, smoking weed and doing things like that. But once I got injured, the opiates were given to me. I was prescribed opiates, and I took them for a couple of years. Well, actually, a little over a year. Those that were prescribed, and when it came time to get off of them, that's when I experienced the withdrawals. And you know, I didn't know anything about that. I thought something was wrong, mentally, honestly, until I realized, man, I'm detoxing from drugs. So that's what happens a lot of times with the heroin addicts, is they get on the pills first, recreationally or because of an injury, and after they take them for a significant amount of time, you know, they try to stop and they can't find any more pills, and so a lot of times they'll turn to the heroin, which is a lot cheaper, and it's a lot more dangerous too.
The biggest drugs here in the CSRA, which are the biggest ones?
Well, marijuana, of course, is pretty much everywhere. It's a big problem everywhere. But what we see mostly here in Augusta is methamphetamines and heroin or opiates. Those are the two big ones here that are causing lots of problems. There's a lot of methamphetamines in the CSRA. And heroin, when I was coming up, it was not that prevalent. But here in the past, you know, few years, it's exploded here. There is a lot of heroin, a lot of methamphetamines here in Augusta.
Doctor, can you explain for us what it means for people to be addicted to methamphetamines, these opioids, and even marijuana? What is going on with the body?
So addiction is a brain disease, and there's different parts of the brains. When you think about kind of, you know, what leads to the initial rush, you think about kind of dopamine in the brain and the dopamine reward pathway. If you had to think of an equivalent, imagine, you know, being out in the desert after like 2 days not having water. You find some water, you get some water, you take that drink, it feels really good. Take that, times it by about 10 or more, and that's kind of how you got, you know, what drugs do, what the good feeling the drugs can have on the brain and the dopamine rush. So initially you start out using it to kind of feel good, but over time your body becomes dependent and tolerant on it. It kind of needs that to kind of survive, and then your brain thinks that you need this to survive. So over time, you know, it kind of evolves into, now instead of just doing it to get high or whatever, you're doing it just to feel normal, just to feel good, you know, just to be okay, not be sick. And so it kind of takes a second stage as you get into more of the chronic use more, and that can be devastating to people, and it just takes over your lives.
And Anna, you experienced that just as you and your husband were working to sort of build this empire that you have now. Mm-hmm. You personally experienced the same thing, and you had to get clean in order to help others.
Yeah, you know, for me it was learning to live life on life's terms. You know, it's like once you get clean, you have to learn how to deal with life again. You deal with problems, you go through things don't always go your way. And so for me, we went to treatment in South Carolina, and, you know, we were clean and we were, you know, trying to get our life back on track, and I slipped up. And, you know, I think it was a very good example that he used. You know, it's like getting that drink of water. You've been in the desert, getting that drink of water, like that feeling. But for me, you know, when I relapsed, I couldn't even enjoy it, because I knew what was wrong with me. I knew what was going on, and I was depressed. And so, but I feel like I needed to go through that in order to get where I am to help these ladies. Because, you know, it's one thing to say, you know, I get it, but it's another thing to say, I understand. Like, I know where you are, I know what you're going through. And I think, you know, that's the difference between our program and a lot of other programs, is that we can tell these people, you know, I know what you're dealing with. I know what you're feeling because I've been there before. I think that makes a big difference for the ladies to hear that.
So you're just getting clean, and then your husband comes to you and he says, babe, I want to start 143 Ministries. I want to open up a sober living home for women called Catherine's Way. And there's also a home for men, and you also have transitions homes, Emmanuel's House. So I want you to all talk with me about how that worked. You all are just getting clean yourselves, and then you're like, let's help everybody else. So how did that conversation go? And tell me, you know, and I think there's a special meaning behind Catherine's Way as well. So kind of just tell me, you know, Cliff, tell me how you brought this conversation to your wife after she's fragile, you know, you're just getting clean, but you want to take that moment and help others when you're still working through this clean thing yourself.
Yeah. Well, when I completed the rehab program, the next year I volunteered there. And so I had an opportunity to see how a rehab runs, to teach classes there, to mentor people, sponsor people. And so we were already really doing it. We were just doing it elsewhere. And so when we moved back to Augusta, we started the church, the River, and that first year we started seeing lots of people who were coming from the same backgrounds that we had, you know, in drug addiction and trying to get clean. And that first year we sent about 30 people to rehab. And so we just started seeing that we were sending people to other places, and they weren't Christian places. And we just felt like, man, we could probably do this ourselves and include the gospel as well. And so it was kind of like we saw how great the need was. We were kind of already doing it ourselves anyway. It was just to take the next step, which would be to have our own place. So it was kind of, you know, it wasn't like one day we're like, we're not doing this and we're going to decide to. It was kind of like a progression of we're already in ministry, we're already helping people. We could kind of gather some of the people that we have helped get clean, and we can all do this together.
Was there something about those 30 people that you sent, which is a lot of people?
Yeah.
Was there something about those 30 people that you sent who didn't get the 143 Ministries way? What was it? Are they clean now? I mean, how many were successful?
Yeah, some of them are. Actually, one of our full-time employees at Catherine's Way, Brandy, is one of the girls that we sent to rehab. But what we saw was most of them did not make it. It was a very small percentage. You know, I don't have the exact numbers, but most rehabs have a very small success rate.
Why is that?
I personally believe it's because they have eased God out, more specifically Jesus. We've dealt with a lot of rehabs, and it's a very touchy subject when you start talking about Jesus, and that's the way that we got clean. When we were in rehab, there was a group of us, it was about 6 or 7 of us that all came together, and we decided we were going to follow Christ, but also work our program. And today, all of us are still clean. And so every single one of us in that little small group that was in that rehab, which was not a faith-based place, and we've watched people relapse over and over and over and over again. And there's a difference between saying you believe in Jesus and actually selling out and following him. And so what we believe is that if we can get people to sell out to Christ and to actually truly follow him and then use the tools of the 12 steps, that the success rate is far greater than what we're seeing at places that are just, you know, simply 12-step or higher power focused.
You run Catherine's Way, Anna, and so tell me what's going on. What is the program like? Tell me about, you all take this traditional program and then you add Jesus. What's it like for these women who are in Catherine's Way who have to go through this program, which you all say is successful?
Well, I think at first it's difficult because you're telling somebody that is broken and who has lost trust in, you know, a lot of people around them to trust someone that they don't know. And so I think for the women at first it's a little difficult because they have to wrap their mind around, okay, I'm giving my all into someone that I don't know and someone that I can't see and someone that I don't know if I can fully trust. But I think once they start to see him move in their lives and they see him restore relationships, they see him, you know, answer prayers that they've been praying probably their whole lives, and in that little bit of time they see him answer those prayers, you know, they give it all up, you know, and they get out of the way and they allow him to direct them. And I think, you know, when they learn that they have to get out of the way because their way doesn't work, because their way got them to where they are, I think once they start doing that, that's when the program starts to work. And they start putting their trust in the 12 steps.
After you get through the trust part, how difficult is it to, because you mean these people have strict rules that they have to follow. I mean, it's tough. I mean, it's like boot camp.
Yeah.
Describe it for me.
Yeah. Well, it is like boot camp, but the thing is that for the longest time they've had no structure. And so for a lot of them, when they come in and they get that little bit of structure, they actually realize they like it. Because they realize that what they've been doing hasn't worked. And so what's the worst thing that can happen? That they get clean, that they get happy, joyous, and free. And I think once they realize that, it becomes a little bit easier. But it is a little boot camp style, but it's okay.
So and you shared with me, it's no cell phones, no internet, and you are in your Bible all day long, and that is when you begin to introduce Jesus. And a year ago, Tara, you decided that you were going to change your life around and jump into this program, and here you are, 18 months clean. Tell me a little bit about your story before you got into Catherine's Way and graduated. What was life like for you?
Well, I struggled for 10 plus years in and out of different, jail and different rehabs. And I mean, I tried to get clean for 10 years. I've used longer than 10 years, but like it was 10 years of me in and out, jail, rehab, jail, rehab, jail, rehab. And I was just exhausted. I was done, and I think I got to the point where I had nothing left to lose. So it's like, go for it, let's just do this. Let's try this. And I can say now, like 2 weeks after I was at Catherine's Way, I knew I was done. I was done with this life. I felt it then, and I mean, I feel it even stronger now, but I think the biggest thing for me with Catherine's Way is I found a relationship with the Lord as that I could get through anything. It's like I could do anything could happen to me, and I did not have to, I could get through it without having to use drugs and alcohol like I had before. And that was, because even while I was in Catherine's Way and in transition phase, and even since I've been out on my own, I've had so many speed bumps, I'd call them, along the way, and I just, have kept going because, I know without a shadow of a doubt that like God's got me.
That's right.
I'm okay. And I think the biggest thing, and I mean, it hasn't always been easy. I mean, I've kicked and screamed the whole time, not gonna lie, but it's, God's timing is like really nailed into your head at Catherine's Way. It's God's timing, it's God's timing, it's God's timing. And so many different things so many answered prayers throughout this past 18 months and different things that I have done and accomplished along the way have shown me, even if I've had to learn the hard way, that God's timing is always right. And I think that was the biggest thing compared to, I mean, the main thing is if you're going to get clean, if you want to get clean, you will get clean. Doesn't matter where you are.
That's right.
In life. You can't make another person want to do it. But I think the biggest thing about Catherine's Way is you see all of these people that have been where you're at when you first get there, and they've made something of themselves. They've come this far in life. They're happy, and you see all that, and it makes you, even if you don't want it 100% when you get there, you're like, I want that. I want what they have. I want their life. And I think this fellowship with 143 Ministries is like, it's unlike anywhere I've ever been in any other facility I've been in all different cities and states and all that kind of stuff. That's drug addicts have a problem feeling accepted and feeling wanted. And I think before you realize that, like, before you truly learn at Catherine's Way that your worth comes from Jesus and Jesus only, you have so many other people that love you and accept you no matter what. And that's a really big, and they've all been where you're at and come out on the other end of it, so like it just shows you like there's light at the end of the tunnel. And it's not always easy, and I've had to look at myself in the mirror and tell myself things over and over and over again, like there's light at the end of the tunnel. Like I've told myself that standing in the mirror so many times, but I mean, without the, the structure and, I mean, the people and the love that is just surrounded at Catherine's Way and the river and everything else. I mean, that is like, I can't think of the word, but I mean, that it's just all of that together, just
It's what you need
it
at
just
that
brings it all. It's what I needed, and I think it's what I might be biased, but I mean, everybody needs Jesus. So It's that's the common denominator to everything. So
What were some of the issues that you battled that sent you into Catherine's Way? And now that you've graduated, how are you able to stay away from those?
So just starting like when I first got, right before I got into Catherine's Way, my fiance of 10 years and I broke up. I was kicked out of our house that I lived in with him and my son. I was living with my parents. Then I got kicked out of my parents' house, and I had nowhere to go. I was homeless, and I went to Catherine's Way. 2 weeks after Catherine's Way, I got a letter in the mail that I had lost rights to my son. And
Did all of this calamity at the time push you closer to your addiction problems?
Yeah. Well, before I got to Catherine's Way, yes. It just, because I had so much recovery in my head, every relapse got worse because I was trying to cover up the feelings of knowing what I was doing was wrong.
That's good.
Yeah.
I was so ashamed of myself because I knew, it's like the book and the A book and you know how to stay clean and you still can't do it. And so you just keep doing more and more and more and trying to cover it up, and it doesn't cover it up. I mean, it may be for, a little while, but not in the broad scheme of things. No, you still wake up the next morning the same, person that's down in this dark hole, just full of shame and guilt, and you just lost. I mean, I was just lost.
And so now that you've graduated, how are you able to stay clean? How are you able to survive? Have you locked it in, or are there just things that you just don't do, places that you don't go anymore?
Yes, there are definitely people I don't talk to, places I don't go, and things I don't do. That is 100% definitely.
One of the
people,
things you have to
places,
give up?
Oh, I mean, friends. I say friends like that because, it's people that I talked to and associated with for years and years and years, and now there's even a couple of them that are clean too. And even in both of us being clean, we don't associate with each other. It's just, I can cheer them on from afar, social media friends and stuff like that. But do I hang out with them? Do I talk to them? No. I don't go out and party. I don't go to bars. I don't. It doesn't sound fun to me anymore anyways. I mean, like, my sister's birthday is coming up this week, and she's like, we're renting a party bus. It's her 25th birthday. Would you like to come? No.
You're like, I need to stay as far away from that as
That
possible.
sounds awful to me. And could I go and stay sober? Yes. But that would be miserable. I mean,
Right.
drunk people annoy me now. So, I mean,
Doctor, how tough is it when you have had an addiction problem and then you're placed back into that same environment?
Well, I mean, you still get the cravings no matter how long you've been sober. 5 years, 10 years, you can still get cravings. So addiction is a chronic disease. It's always going to be with you. You've always got to be doing things to maintain it, just like hypertension and diabetes. You got to take your medications, diet, and exercise to keep them under control. With addiction, you got to do some kind of maintenance program
And
throughout
it's
your
interesting
life.
that you put addiction in the same category with like an illness like diabetes. And for people out there who might be saying it's totally different, what would you say?
It's just different in the fact that addiction is a brain disease versus other parts that affected by diabetes. And as being a brain disease, you get some things with it like denial that you don't maybe have as much for the diabetes because it tells you that you don't have it. It tells you that everything's okay. It also tends to affect families and people more. If somebody's sugars are off and they're having really bad sugars, they might end up in the hospital, but that usually doesn't affect other people as much. But if somebody's full on in the relapse, they're spending money that they don't have, they're hanging around the wrong people, they're making other bad decisions they might be making that's related to the use, and it affects the whole family.
Yeah.
So it's more noticeable, it's more destructive. But when you think back of the chemistry and everything, it's similar. It's a brain disease. It's a chronic disease. You got to treat it the same way. You can't just go someplace and expect it to go away. It's there with you forever. But you can keep it in remission, just like people can manage their diabetes well. They diet, they exercise, they take their medication. It no longer causes the problems like with the heart disease as much. It reduces their risk to almost the normal population. Same thing could be for addicts. And the one thing I really like about addiction compared to everything else is that with addiction you can get people better than where they were before. Like when they live a life of recovery, they feel like they're better people. They're more connected. They have more meaning in their life. They have more satisfaction in life. You can be a better person than you were before you were an addict. Whereas with every other disease like diabetes, you're you just can get back to baseline, back to where you were at. But with addiction, you can become a better person. You can take these things as steps, and whether it's religion or anything else, other ways that you kind of incorporate it, you can make it into a better life and a life of recovery, which is really important.
And Lori, you're going through that recovery life right now, and like Tara said, you have probably cut people off. Do you see that light at the end of the tunnel now as you're graduating in a couple of days?
Yeah.
Tell me your story. It's amazing. You were in Myrtle Beach and here, sort of back and forth, and you were addicted in both places.
Yeah.
And now you're here. How did this all start for you?
Well, I started using when I was 12 or 13, but I think I've always been an addict. I can remember at 2 years old, my older sister and her friends drinking and me taking shots of water and just keep going, trying to feel what they were feeling, you know? But to actually start using drugs, it was around 12 or 13, and I was a hardcore user from that moment, you know? I was selling meth in high school, and it was mostly uppers at first. But then when I was around 24, I got diagnosed with cancer. And after a few surgeries, the doctors came out and told my parents that it spread further than they thought. It spread to my lungs, and there was nothing they could do, and basically just go home and make me comfortable till I die. So they put me on a lot of pain medicine, a lot. My family, they actually prayed over me, and you know, I really never grew up in church. I didn't know God. And the next week we did another scan, and what they saw as cancer before that was now scar tissue. And but I still had to undergo a lot of treatments. I had to do 19 months of interferon treatment, high dose interferon treatment at MUSC, and a lot of other surgeries and stuff. So that introduced me to, you know, pain medicine and things like that. After that, just like Cliff said, it was the same thing that you always hear, you know, that started getting too expensive after I finished treatment, and heroin was cheaper, and, you know, it was stronger. So I moved to that, and after that, like, it was just a roller coaster of rehabs, trying to get sober on my own, trying to go to AA. My dad just celebrated 22 years sober this month, and so whenever I first wanted to get clean, I remember that week I got arrested for loitering with intent to traffic heroin, and I overdosed 4 times that week.
4 times?
Yeah. One of the times nobody was there with me. I woke up gasping for air and watched in the mirror as my lips turned from blue to pink. And so it scared me. And I called my dad, who I didn't have a relationship with at the time, and he lived in Aiken, you know, right here by Augusta. I was living in Myrtle Beach. And he was able to come help me. I didn't stay clean at that time. I tried to work a program in AA, just going to AA. I didn't know God. And I did that several times, and then, you know, I went to a few rehabs, still didn't know God. And I just thought, honestly, that I was always going to be an addict. I saw my dad get sober. My sister's 15 years sober. They both got sober one time, went to AA, and they were good. And I was like, well, this program don't work for me. You know, it works for everybody else, but it don't work for me.
And now you're about to finish Catherine's Way.
Yes.
What was different for you?
Well, I just had to get a little more pain.
Yeah.
Honestly, this last run for me, everything I thought I would never do, I did. When I got to Catherine's Way, I was so broken. And, you know, one of the leaders the other day was talking about when you're in rehab, you know, you're mad at yourself, you're mad to be here. I've never been mad to be here because I was so broken and I didn't know what to do. And when I got in the life that I was living, the trauma that I was living in, when I got to Catherine's Way, it was the first time that I felt safe in a really long time. And I knew that I was at the right place, so I was very grateful. And I knew that I didn't know how to do this. I didn't know how to do life. You know, I tried every way possible, and the person that I turned into from living a life like that, I hated. I didn't hate nobody else, I hated myself. So when I came in those doors, I was literally like, just tell me what to do. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. And, you know, after being there, living with a bunch of women, sometimes that mindset's hard to keep. But, you know, one thing I pray for every day is the gift of desperation. Lord, please, please remind me of how I felt when I came in those doors. And he'll do that. You know, there was a time I was getting a little ungrateful. And then, you know, the Lord reminded me of how I felt. And it felt like it wasn't even my own feelings anymore. And I was so thank you, Lord, for letting me be here. Thank you for bringing me here.
So you're proof that AA might work, but for some people you need Jesus. You're
Yeah,
proof.
I do.
That's what happens.
Yeah, that is definitely the difference. You know, my whole life, especially getting sober, every time I tried to get sober, I'm like, what am I missing? Like, what am I not doing right? You know, they're telling me to work these steps. I think I'm working them to the best of my ability. I'm being completely honest. I'm, you know, doing everything they say. But my higher power was just this God I prayed to when I really needed help, you know? And that was it. That was as far as that relationship went. So, you know, I've been to other rehabs. I've learned a little bit about the three-part illness, but I've never learned, what do you do about it? You know, you got this illness, but what do you do about it?
And they teach you that at Catherine's.
Yeah, so, you know, it's a lot different here. So you get a solution here. And then you also get the higher power that you need. So I realized being at Catherine's Way my whole life, I've been so powerless, and I've been looking for power in all the wrong things. And my wounds, which was just revealed to me the other day, started off when I was 5 years old and my dad went to prison. And, you know, ever since then I've been searching for that power in the wrong spot. And whenever I got to Catherine's Way, you know, Cliff told me, because like I said, I didn't know Jesus, I didn't know God. He said, if you want to trust somebody, you got to get to know them. And because I was willing to do anything it took, because I wanted what these people had, I saw them and I looked at their lives, and I knew that they were sincere about what they were doing. And so I started getting into my Bible, and, you know, the Lord just reveals things to you. And one of the things I realized, you know, I was in jail before I got here, and that's when I really got on my knees and I surrendered and said, Lord, please save me. And now I see the whole picture. I didn't realize it at the time, but the Lord answered my prayers that day. And I didn't know that, but he did. And now I see the whole picture lined out. Like, not only did he save me, but throughout this whole plan that he laid in place, he restored mine and my sister's relationship, mine and my father's relationship, mine and my kids' relationship. My mom watches the river online in Myrtle Beach, and it's starting to renew her relationship with Jesus. Like, it's big, you know.
So he used you.
Yeah.
That same power, Wyatt, do you see that at Emmanuel's house, where you're in rehab now, just like Laura? Do you see that working the same way? How is it helping you to move further away from your addiction?
Oh man, it's overwhelming. It really is. You know, it gets to a point where, you know, you die in front of your parents, in front of your kids, in front of your spouse. You go to jail. You face whatever amount of time, life, 10 years. You lie to everybody and become manipulative. You act like you're okay. You try to put this facade of meekness on so that you can just be fine. And you're faking it the whole time. And then you become, like what she was saying, just so broken. You're like, okay, I need help. People start dying around you. And the same thing that you're doing. They're not coming back to life, you know?
Tell us a little bit about your story and how you ended up where you are.
I started using when I was around 12, just started smoking weed, drinking. My mom was a cocaine addict for a little bit. She ended up getting off cocaine, and she still continues to drink. My dad drinks. My dad drinks heavily. My mom not so much anymore, which I praise God for. I think a big part of having to deal with that, I started using like heavily. When I got older, I moved out. I had a child at a young age in 9th grade. I started using heroin and opiates probably about 20 years old. And at that point in time, like, I just kept using and friends were dying and friends were dying. And then it happened to me, except I came back and it freaked me out. I hit up somebody and was like, dude, I need help. And he was like, yeah, you're gonna die if you don't get help. So, Emmanuel House and another ministry, which is they just combined, and it was it's 6 months intensive at that point in time, and really they just pour their heart into you. People that are recovered, you know, they still go through recovery daily, but they're no longer suffering from the addiction aspect of it, you know, and you just let them pour into you. Take the suggestions, take the correction, act it out. Don't fake it, you know, be vulnerable. If you're struggling with something, be real with them. And I just started seeing that happen for me. Like I'm sitting here talking to you right now when I could be dead, you know? Or I could be helping somebody else. Like now I'm getting to a point where I'm able to help certain people that want that help. Like they'll come to me and say, hey, Wyatt, you know, how do you feel about this? I'm struggling with something. Like I never would have thought in my life I'd be able to say, yeah, man, I've been clean for 6 months.
Pastor Nobles, how does that make you feel knowing that you were called for this? You were called for this so that you can save Wyatt and save Laura and save Tara. You were called to do this, and there's church involved where, and I've been, Friday night church is real. Friday night church, y'all, is real.
Yeah, it is.
The Friday night that I went, someone gave a testimony about being on drugs and being in and out of jail. And all these people you sort of brought together, and you've saved them from addiction, but you've saved their life. Pastor, how does that make you feel?
Very, very grateful. And, you know, I also know that it wasn't me, it was God. And I'm just the vessel. Honestly, if it wasn't me, he'd have used somebody else. Yeah. Because God's going to get done what he wants done. So I'm just very humbled by the whole situation, very grateful to be part of what God's doing here, and amazed by it all. I mean, I wake up every day and I'm like, man, this is my life. You know, there were many years when I was out of my mind, you know, and anyone who knows me from the past, you know, knows where I was, and they know that only God could have done this in me, you know. So I can't take any credit for it, honestly. It's just a God thing.
God saw it in you, and one other person saw something in you too. Tell me about that person.
Yes, Catherine, my grandma. There were a couple people who saw it. My mom saw it in me. My mom never gave up on me either. But my grandma specifically, she always believed in me. She always said I was special. You know, everyone in my family is successful, and then there was me in prison. But she always spoke life over me. She always told me I was going to be somebody, and when it came time to fight for my life, her words, you know, they were in me, and I believed I was better than where I was, and I believed there was purpose in my life, and so I began to fight for it. And yeah, so Catherine is who we named Catherine's Way after, and her way was to love me despite my mess, and so that's kind of our motto. You know, we want to love people where they're at, and just like she did for me.
And love has a special meaning for 143 Ministries as well.
Yes. 143 is an old beeper code for those of us who are old enough to remember pagers. And so we, you know, we used to send 143 to say I love you. And throughout my journey, you know, through prison and after prison was a very difficult time for me because I knew I was called into ministry. I knew I was called to preach, but I didn't want to do it, so I ran from God and got back on drugs and got back into selling drugs. And all through those years of prison and you know, running from God, he would put 143 in plain view, and I would see it, and it was just like something between me and him where he was saying, I love you. And his love for me, you know, you don't feel like you deserve God's love, you know? I mean, especially when you do the things that I did, how anybody could love me, especially God who knows all my secrets. When it came time to name our ministry, we just felt like that one kind of just set when we were thinking about it. You know, I Love You Ministries, 143 Ministries. And so now what's happened is everybody, and it'll happen to you from now on too, you just watch.
Oh no, like
you're going to start seeing 143 everywhere.
If I see it during a work day, it means something else. Like I better get my work done. But
yeah.
yes.
But so now everybody that's part of part of the ministry, you know, we all see that number everywhere.
Yeah.
It'll be on your receipt. It'll be on, you know, a truck driving by, and it's just God's way of saying to each of us, I love you.
So, Pastor, how do people get connected? If there's someone who's addicted and they're watching this and they say, I want to be done with this for good, or if they have a loved one that they want to connect, how do they get connected? You guys have church on Sundays, on Fridays, and then you have Catherine's Way in Emmanuel's house. There's so many elements. How do they get connected to you?
Probably the easiest way is to go on the website, 143ministries.org. The number's 143ministries.org. On there, we have a schedule of what's going on with our ministry throughout the week. We've got something going on pretty much every day of the week. We also have a 1-800 number. It's 1-800-560-7143. That's also on the website. They can call and actually talk to one of us. And, you know, we do a lot of ministering to families. And so a lot of times the person who's struggling with addiction is not the person who reaches out. And that's the same thing that happened with me. My mom reached out to the place first and kind of made that initial contact. And we can help coach the families, you know, through the process of what it takes for someone to get to the point to where they're ready. So yeah, the website or the 1-800 number is the best way.
Thank you. You all have shared amazing stories. I just want to take the final 30 seconds and just kind of go around and get final thoughts from you all. Tara, we'll start with you.
What do you mean final thoughts?
Just some final thoughts for someone. If you have anything else on your
Like
chest.
for people struggling? I mean,
Yes.
I think I know I lived a fake, like I was just a fake person. And I think like the biggest thing is for addicts out there, like to get real with yourself. Like you know you need help. I've been there. I knew I needed help. So you know you need help. Reach out. Like it's not, and don't be afraid to, because especially anyone in this group and anyone really that has been to Catherine's Way or Emmanuel's house or goes to the river or anybody, you can reach out to any of them. I mean, we'll all love you and want to help you. I mean, it's
Be real with yourself.
yeah.
Good advice.
Be real.
Recovery is possible. You know, there is life after all of this, after all that you've been through. There is life after this.
Laura?
Well, first of all, no matter what you've done, you know, you are forgiven. You can lead a better life. This just came to me the other day, but, you know, with this whole big picture, this whole plan that God has laid out with 143 Ministries, you know, we have the women's recovery and the men's recovery. I was thinking back by where my wound started, my dad going to prison, and how just over the years the family unit fell apart. And I think it's just so amazing that God is using this ministry to help the men and help the women and bring that family unit back together under God. And so it's just, I love it.
Thank you. Doctor, any final thoughts on just the seriousness? I did want to ask you this, so incorporate it, please, in your final thoughts. Physically, what's going on with your body when you're dealing with substance abuse?
So like there's the reward pathway in the brain that I was talking about with the water, where you can, you know, need that more than somebody needs water when they're thirsty without water for 2 days, like 10 times as much as that. And then the tolerance, the dependency, it becomes a need for you. But there is help. There is ways to, you know, get through that. There is help out there. Sometimes you get, you know, kind of disappointed or sad when things don't work out, when it's a struggle. But if you hang in there, if you keep calling, if you keep reaching out, if you keep trying, if you don't give up, there's people like this place, there's people like other places. It's not just this way. There's plenty of ways to skin a cat. There's plenty of ways to peel an orange. There's plenty of ways to recovery. And if you find that way, that works for you, just keep going, keep working, keep trying until you do.
Is there something medically going on with the brain when you say, Jesus helped? Jesus was the answer. Is there a medical reason for that?
The best way to describe that is connection. So, you know, what grounds people is connection. It's finding people that really care about, or something that you really care about, more than yourself, that is willing to motivate you to get you through to your recovery.
And no doubt your helping yourself internally with a whole lot of other medical issues
Yeah.
when you get off that substance.
But it's connection in the brain, and the connection is the same pathway of reward pathways. The same connections that you get with families, with loved ones, is that same pathway. That's the natural part of that pathway. So finding those connections, using that natural, it's not a high, it's a natural rewards that you get, and building that foundation. And a lot of times it takes losing that gets us into addiction. It takes having that be taken away from them that's before you realize, how badly you need the help.
And you're still getting the help that you need, Wyatt, but from what you have learned, what are some of your final thoughts that you'd like to share for someone who may be watching?
Cliff and other leaders in this discipleship program for recovering drug addicts has really helped me to understand that, sometimes my thinker's broken, especially coming off drugs. Regardless of how long I've been clean, in my personal opinion, it could be 5 years that you've been clean, but if you're struggling with the thought of use, or even with everyday life, like your thinker might be going through some break-ins. So definitely have somebody that's been doing it longer, or that has a more solid foundation of their recovery to help you in your day-to-day walk in that. But other than that, man, continue to pray on it too. You need somebody that's spiritually healthy to help you get over a spiritual issue.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep.
Final words, Pastor?
Yeah, no matter how far you've gone down, don't give up. No matter how far your loved one seems to be down in that hole, no matter how hopeless it feels, don't give up. God does his greatest work in the situations that we call hopeless.
Yeah.
And so don't give up. Continue to pray, continue to trust God. Faith is a vital part in recovery for the addict and families. And so put your faith in God, and he'll move for you.
That's good.
I've asked you all to do something that is very tough, and that's to open up and be transparent. So I thank each and every one of you for doing just that. Doctor, thank you so much for your insight. And I really appreciate you, and I'm sure that the community appreciates you as well. Thank you for allowing us to share with you how very tough, but how very possible it is to walk a journey from drugs to dreams.